Leela Singh, your podcast host, and I'd like to welcome you to the My Brand HQ podcast, all things personal branding for career acceleration. This podcast is for talented, ambitious career professionals like you who are wanting to be perceived as a thought leader, to be top of mind to those that matter, and to make an impact and stand out, be that in your team, your organization, or your industry, and to be inspired by other successful leaders. I will be interviewing high-achieving career professionals who have carved out a successful career in their field and are open to sharing their career journey, their challenges, their learnings and insights with you, someone who is looking to establish your personal brand and accelerate your career. Through my personal branding and coaching practice, I enable career professionals primarily in the technology industry to earn more money, to increase their salary. In fact, I spoke to all of my past clients that I've worked with over several years and learned that actually overall, they've received an average of 47% increase in their package. Would that be a great place to be? They've also all achieved at least one, if not more, promotions or moved on to a higher level in their career at another organization. And they're looking to advance their career while showing up as the best version of themselves. If this sounds like you, then do reach out to me and let's have a chat. And why do I do this? Well, during my corporate career spanning 25 years, I quickly realized that hard work alone was not enough to get me to where I wanted to be and the success that I strive for. And my belief is that hard work, coupled with creating and establishing a strong personal brand, can both influence and accelerate your career and get you to where you want to be. In today's My Brand HQ podcast, we're going to be speaking to Sarah Chapman. After her aspirations of a ballet career were halted due to an injury, Sarah became inspired by her chemistry teacher, who revealed the complex science behind maintaining consistency in a well-known soft drink. Discovering her passion for science and despite an ongoing struggle with maths, Sarah graduated with a first-class degree in chemistry. Throughout her varied career, she has grasped the huge diversity of roles that the STEM industry offers, many of which are invisible to those outside the world of science. Sarah has channeled her passion for encouraging girls to pursue STEM careers while supporting other women within the industry over the last 15 years. A technical manager for global science company 3M, Sarah sees firsthand the importance of using strengths like collaboration and creativity, which can drive innovation and highlight the value that women bring to the traditionally male-dominated STEM roles. Reaching over 3,000 young people through various activities, including STEM clubs, work experience placements, mentoring, and career talks, Sarah has been a driving force behind 3M's award-winning community program. As a judge for their Young Innovators competition, Sarah has witnessed the brilliant ideas that are presented and reinforcing her belief that good ideas come from anywhere and that diversity is critical to innovation. Like many working parents, Sarah actively finds effective ways to maximize her impact and takes opportunities to share her passion for STEM, using technology to support students in Zambia, as well as appearing on the BBC and founding a successful science supper club to encourage children into science. Today, Sarah will be sharing with us her experience as a project manager for the design and build of the 3M Innovation Centre back in 2014, and also the importance of encouraging young girls and more women into the world of tech and the need to bridge the STEM skills gap. Also, why diversity is critical to innovation, how working in the tech industry can be rewarding, fulfilling, and exciting all at the same time, and why we need to ask for what we want and be overt in promoting who we are and what we do within the workplace for women seeking to accelerate their career. So let's head over and hear what Sarah has to say. Hey Sarah, how are you doing today?
Hi Leela, thanks for having me. I'm really well, thank you.
Great to have you here. So welcome to My Brand HQ podcast, and thank you for taking time out to speak with me today. I wanted to delve straight into some questions, if that's okay.
No problem.
So first of all, I understand you're a board member of the Farnborough College of Technology. So can you give me a little bit of insight into what you've gained from this role, from being a part of that?
Definitely. So that's a voluntary role, and it's something I wanted to do for a while. And I was actually looking for a role like that was outside of London, just so that I could fit it in around family and all the other things that I do. So this role came up at Farnborough College of Technology. It's an incredible college. It's Ofsted outstanding, and I think colleges play a really important part in social mobility. So it's a kind of personal passion for me to be able to give something back. I know it's cliched, but I really feel like I'm able to do that. But there's a surprising career benefit to it. So at the college, I get to see, as a member of the board, I get to see a lot more of the running of the college. I get to see management accounts. I get to see strategic and actually participate in the strategic planning. And I think when you work for a big corporate like I do, I work for a big multinational, so I often see those things, of course, happen in a multinational, but they happen often in a completely different country, and you kind of see the results and then you have to implement them. So actually working for a smaller organization in a board member capacity is really good, because you get to see quite a lot more of the operations. And the other thing that has been absolutely brilliant is the board's quite diverse. Which is great. It's something that we're focused on anyway, making sure we've got that diversity. And as a result, there are so many role models for me, of all different types. But it's brilliant to be able to see and to work with people some of whom have got years and years and years of experience. Some in the STEM industry, some more in education. And then I think the final benefit for me is I do a lot of STEM volunteering, so science, technology, engineering, and maths volunteering, working with educational partners. And because I'm not a teacher myself, working for the college actually enables me to see a bit more about education, to learn about education, so I can hopefully be a better advocate for STEM education.
Wow, fantastic. That's an amazing opportunity to have that, and to also be able to commit the time to doing it. But it sounds like you're getting so much from it as well.
It's brilliant. I would highly recommend it if anybody's considering it. Absolutely, it's been one of the best things I've done.
Wow, that's amazing. And so tell me a little bit more. You talked about diversity there. So why do you think we're struggling to attract more women into the technology industry?
Yeah, it's really difficult. We've still got a major skills gap in the UK, and we need to engage women if we're going to fill it. There's been progress. So very recently, WISE celebrated 1 million women working in STEM occupations. That's fantastic, but if you look at it in the bigger context, we still have such a long way to go. And there are particular underrepresentations, particular pockets where we've still got really major representation issues. So, for example, I think it's around 10% women in engineering. That really is low. And it's crazy, because there is a proven link between diversity and innovation, and it's causative. It's not just that companies that are more innovative happen to also be more diverse. They've actually done studies that show that diversity is driving innovation. So why we wouldn't be, making that top priority, I don't know. It's crazy. I think the reason that we're struggling, because obviously a lot of companies are doing a lot of work on this, a lot of organizations are really pushing this agenda. But I think we're still struggling, partly because of lack of role models. And that's not because they don't exist. You can always find somebody, and actually it's a pet peeve of mine when we talk about diversity. People often point out the one person. They'll say, well, there's a black woman who's the CEO of X company, and you're like, okay, great. So one person's made it, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't highlight those examples, but actually they're not very accessible. Sometimes the really super successful senior people, you look at that, if you're just starting out in your career, you look at that and you're like, whoa. So what I would like to see is more numerous role models, much more diversity of role models. So lots of different people doing it in lots of different ways. Just because it's possible, just because one person has done it, does not mean that it's easy or common or accessible. So I really think we need to look at making sure that role models can be visible with loads and loads of different scenarios and situations. So the other thing that's important is to realise the benefit of diversity. You need inclusion, and I think certainly for a while diversity was sort of fashionable, and then we didn't really talk enough about inclusion. So that's where, for example, the statistic about women on boards, you only really get the benefit of having more women on the board if you have a kind of critical mass, at least 30% of women on boards. So you do need those kind of numerous role models. You need it to be accessible to everybody, not just a kind of a lucky few. The other thing that's really, I think, is a factor, and I guess I've experienced it a little bit, is family life and balancing whether it's children or other caring responsibilities, or I do a lot of volunteering, and it's really important to me. It's something that is good for my mental well-being. It's good for the community. It kind of really drives me. And I want to be able to do that as well as having a career. So we do need to think about flexibility. Again, I think it's really interesting. The current situation is actually, in a way, I think it's moved us forward with some of that flexible working, remote working, which will help everybody, not just women, to kind of juggle and make sure they can do the things that are important to them. So there's definitely something there around. We do still see a drop off for women around sort of the typical age of where people look to have children. You see it in the data. So we need to work on that, and that will benefit everybody. It's not just going to benefit working mums. It's going to benefit parents. It's going to benefit people with caring responsibilities, or people who just want to have a life outside work. So I think that's really important. And then I think the last point I would say about diversity and how we can attract more women to tech is there is still a perception issue. So particularly, I've got a science background, and my company actually do a state of science index. They do a big a global survey, and they look at perceptions of science. And I don't actually have the current data, but I think it was last year they found that I think it was 37% of people believe you have to be a genius to go into science. Right? I'm not a genius. I think most people who work in tech or science are not genius. How do you say it?
Science is probably one of my weakest subjects. I'm like, wow. When someone tells me
exactly.
sciences, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Exactly. And so I think we need to be educating parents and teachers. You can really play a role in that, to say that actually parents and teachers particularly can have a really big influence on young people's career aspirations. And I think when a young person talks about science, if you reinforce that stereotype of kind of, the sort of Einstein image with the genius thing, that it can be really, really off-putting for people. Whereas if you talk about the fact that STEM needs softer skills, not just the technical stuff, but it needs people who can work as teams, it needs people who can are empathetic, it needs people who are creative. It's a huge element of creativity in any kind of tech industry. If you can talk about that a little bit more, then it might help to improve that. So yeah, basically tell kind of stories about role models that people can relate to.
Nice. Wow, you've got a lot in there in terms of the stats you're sharing as well. That's really good to know. I mean, that's bringing it to people's awareness of like that there's so much work to be done. There is so much.
Definitely.
So from your point of view then, what reasons would you give to encourage more women into the industry? Because there's two sides to this, I think, because also, we can talk about encouraging women into tech roles or into the industry, because there are the roles within tech. You don't have to be a science geek, genius, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or technical. They still need HR, procurement, sales, marketing, and all of that. So what would you say about encouraging more women into that industry as a whole?
So first of all, I would say it's where the action is. It's the cutting edge. The definition of technology, it's changing the world. So, I think that, there's some seriously exciting stuff, especially at the moment. We've got autonomous vehicles, we've got the emergence of AI, all these things that maybe have been in the labs. They've been in the labs for a long time, but they're emerging, they're coming out into the world. So I think the first thing is whatever role you do within tech, you can make such a difference, and it really is cutting edge stuff. So it's the kind of the range of technologies. Also, as you said, the range of roles. So even within technical, not only are there those other functions which tech companies need, but also even within technical roles. So I started off in a kind of regulatory role, a very technical role, very specialist role, and I'm now a manager. And actually being a manager, I'm bringing in, technical skills are important. Obviously, I need to be able to understand the kind of projects that my team work on. But as a manager, obviously there's a whole other skill set which is non-technical. And so I think just understanding that, project management is another good example. So having a project manager who knows enough about the technical area or has enough interest in the technical area to be able to work with specialists is really important. But actually the skill set that they need is much broader than just technical stuff. So I think the range of roles, the variety, also the flexibility. I don't know if people think about that when you talk to school kids and you say what's a scientist, and they think of a lab and a white coat, or if you say what's computer science, and they think of somebody who's sat computer coding. And the reality is that there's a percentage of those kind of roles within the tech industry, but actually there's a huge number of roles that can be done at home, or that involve lots of travel, or don't involve travel, or they involve meeting people and technical sales, for example. So I would say that there are so many different options, that things like flexibility and family life, if that's ever a concern for people, I would say it's really not a problem at all. It's certainly for me. I have done different roles depending on family demands and things, but right now I'm doing an EMEA job. So that's Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm doing it from the UK, and like everybody, I'm not traveling at all. So I think in a way that
yeah,
exactly I can still do it because of technology. And then I think the other one is, I talked before about innovation, and the importance is that you can be that change. So if you can pioneer to a certain extent going into technology, if you are a bit different, then that's going to drive innovation. So it's almost like you can use, when you're at school and you just desperately want to fit in, and everybody wants to fit in, it's human nature to want to fit in. In actual fact, if you've got reasons to stand out, then that will drive innovation. So I would almost say that that's a reason to go into it, because maybe you don't see as many people that are like you in the industry. So yeah, I would say that's what we need. We need more different perspectives.
I love the way when I asked you the question, you just completely lit up and you started to talk about it. The passion that you have for it just shines through. And what you're saying, that for me, having spent 16 years in the industry as well, it's such an evolving, fast moving, dynamic industry, and it is so exciting. It's just constant change, and it impacts all industries and individuals. So that there's so much you can do with it, whatever your
background. You never know where you're going to end up.
Exactly. Yeah, I speak for that. Absolutely. You just don't know where you'll find yourself.
Exactly.
So, totally. And you mentioned a couple of times about role models. So did you have a role model when you embarked on your career?
Hundreds, I reckon. I was trying to work out how many kind of mentors and role models I've had, and they really have been so numerous. And I think that's really important, because the reality, especially when you're pioneering a bit, you're not going to find one person that's exactly like you, that's got all your challenges, that's followed exactly the same path. So I kind of this huge section of people who often they start off as mentors, and then they then kind of will do some mentoring, and then times move on, and they just end up as a kind of trusted person in my network. Sometimes they become sponsors. I've actually ended up some people either working for me or me working for them. And I think I've just got a huge list. I've got probably my celebrity role model, like well known, is Maggie Adarin Pocock. So she is amazing, and I've actually never met her. She's like, I admire her from afar, but the reason I like her is not just because she's an amazing space scientist, so you can Google her and find out more about that. It's actually not the reason. I'm a chemist. I'm not that interested in stars and stuff like that. But it's actually the way she does her outreach. So she is so honest and genuine when she does her talks online, when she does her outreach work. So she's kind of my STEM volunteering role model. I want to be like her. Within work, I've had so many. So I've got kind of working mum role models, you know, working parents who have got tips about, you know, oh, you can do this, and have you thought of that, and this work pattern, you know, where you talk about those kind of things. And then I've got kind of career mentors, the people who have really got expertise in the particular industry. And so they can share their expertise, they can share advice, they can, particularly when I'm in the past, when I've been dealing with difficult customers, I've always gone to my mentors to kind of say, okay, help me out here, you know, and I think it's brilliant because it feels like a safety net, you know, and especially if you're maybe doing something it's a bit different. So yeah, definitely, you basically can't have enough mentors, you can't really meet enough role models, you can borrow bits and pieces, you know, it's brilliant. And I think the key thing is the mentor doesn't have to, or the role model doesn't have to be exactly like you. They just have to have something where they can give you some advice. And the other thing to remember around mentoring and role models is how much you can offer to them. So we talk about reverse mentoring, and you always, in my head, I always have an image of kind of a CEO being mentored by an apprentice who's teaching them social media or something like that. I don't think it has to be like that. I think it can be actually more equal, but there's often insight that you can give to your mentor that will be really, really valuable to them. So I think don't see it just as a kind of taking, you're also giving as well. And of course, always pay it forward. So I have a rule that if I have certainly if it's formal, if I have a formal mentor, then I have to add a mentee to my collection.
I like that. That's fantastic. Brilliant. Yeah. And you're so right, you know, the whole reverse mentoring, and, you know, we can always learn from one another. Everyone's got value to offer and a different perspective and insight. So it's, I think it's imperative to be open to that as a mentor.
Definitely.
And yeah, paying it forward. Love it. Love it. That's great, Sarah. And so you've talked about all these role models and amazing mentors you're surrounded with. So tell me a little bit about the best piece of career advice you've ever received.
Yeah, so this is such a hard question because, like I say, I reckon I've had probably hundreds of mentors, and you know, they all at the time have great bits of advice. There's a couple of things that stand out. So I think the first one is to be flexible and open-minded. There's a lot of challenges that I've come across where I've just initially thought, oh my goodness, how on earth can I do that? It's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then actually talking it through with coaching is a great way to do it. Talking it through with partners, with friends, with mentors, I've kind of realized actually this can be done. It's just going to be done in a totally different way. I think probably a few people have had that experience recently with the lockdown. You know, people probably initially, we were all like, what? You know, obviously there are some jobs you can easily do from home, but others it will have been a real challenge, and people have moved mountains and they've really managed. So I think that's one thing, is just to be really open-minded, and that goes about roles as well. So roles, I originally said that I would never go back to doing a European role. I did one at the beginning of my career and I loved it because I got to travel. I went to see so many cities. It was wonderful. I met so many people, but obviously with a family that is more challenging. So I had kind of in my head thought, right, I'm not going to do that kind of role. And here I am. I'm doing it. I'm doing it remotely. It has its challenges, but it's working. The other thing that I would say is to be visible. So, you know, we talk a lot about this, particularly for women. It maybe doesn't come naturally, but everyone is so busy. They're so wrapped up in their own stuff. They're not going to notice. And I've seen some really talented people go unnoticed because they were not pushing their own visibility. So I think you have to be willing to kind of shout about what you're doing. You're the best person to talk about why it's good. Being proactive. So a friend of mine, Tamsin Napier-Munn, she's an inspirational champion for women, and so she's been interviewing women at the very top of their careers, and she said to me recently that their number one piece of advice that goes across all of the different sectors seems to be about being proactive and finding what the organization needs, sometimes before it knows that it needs it, and then being the one that can offer that. So having that kind of unique skill set. She would also say to me, she's always saying, step out of your comfort zone, because that's where the magic happens. The other one I think is some advice which I had when I was first returning from maternity, the first time round, and I think it was my first day back in the office, and we had a networking event, and we had Claire Vivian from Dell at the time. I'm not sure if she still works there. and she was I think she was sort of EMEA VP or something. And she came in, she did a talk, and it was a kind of techie talk. You know, she was talking about some of the technologies. But she mentioned a piece of advice about family, and her advice was have no regrets. So whatever you decide, just go with it. Talking about family, my little one is making noises. So yeah, just have no regrets, go with it. So if you need to work full time, if you decide to work full time, for example, that's okay. Just do it, and do it with confidence, and make the best of it. I think particularly working mums spend a lot of time feeling guilty. You know, when you're at home, you feel like you should be at work, and when you're at work, you feel like you should be at home. And so that advice, it was good advice, because for me, it was so timely, which I suppose brings us back to the point of mentoring. If there was like 3 best pieces of advice ever, they would just be featured in a book, and it would be easy. The point of that is applying that to your life at the time, to your particular situation. So I think, again, I would come back to having coaching, having mentoring, to make sure that you can bring in those bits of advice when they're most useful, and help you to actually apply them to your current situation. And I still think of what Claire Vivian said. She told a story of where she was doing a conference call from the school car park. And it meant that she could make assembly, which to her at the time was super important for her, one of her children. And I was like, actually, you know what? I can do this. It's not just work or home. It's not a choice like that. It's a blend, and that's really helped me.
Amazing. Wow, there's so much in there, and again, that shows the value of having those mentors, those role models, because there's so much you can learn from them all.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess that, and you talked about visibility there as well, and that's something I see a lot of, is people don't almost realize the importance of making yourself visible. And that's why for me, I'm all about advocating personal branding, because people, and this was me as well, you know, I was this person who believed, oh, if I work really hard and I keep my head down, it will all work out. People will recognize what I'm about and what I'm good at, and I'll get promoted and so forth. And then you know, it was early on when I received advice that actually you need to speak up more, you need to make yourself known to the people that matter. And I remember initially, because I was really shy, I really lacked confidence, I was like, I get it, it's good advice, but I don't know what to do. And
it's hard, isn't it?
It is how I help people now with the personal branding element of, you know, a lot of people talk about it as being your LinkedIn profile, your social media presence. For me, it's about the in-person side of that, and being visible, and how you build those networks, and how people get to know who you are, and how you can make an impact without even speaking. And those things,
and what people will say about you when you're out of the room, you know, that's so important, having those, and often those mentors, that's when they become sponsors, you know. And it's interesting, when I watched your TED talk on that topic, or TEDx, it made me think to I went for a job interview within the company, and the hiring manager was actually my boss at the time. So I was like, okay, you know, this is a bit weird, you know, doing an interview. Anyway, we did it, and he said to me, that was a bit left field. And I was, you know, I said, what do you mean? And he said, I wasn't expecting you to apply for that job. And I was so taken aback. I was like, are you serious? That, like, on paper, that is my dream job. That is the job that you couldn't write for me. In my head, you could not have written a better job spec for me personally and for my brand. And it made me realize that even though I'd done quite a lot of work on my, you know, on my personal brand, you just cannot make assumptions that people know what you want or what you're good at. You have to be really, really overt with it, and you have to keep telling them. And certainly as a manager, I really like it when people tell me what they're good at, and they tell me all the stuff they've done, because in reality, I'm not going to be able to spot everything. You know, it's a fast moving world. You know, and I didn't get that job in the end. And it's probably one of my few career regrets, that I maybe didn't make it clear earlier on. I didn't get the job because there was a better candidate, so it may not have changed the outcome. But, you know, the fact that my current boss wasn't, you know, it was a surprise. I was like, whoa, you know, and that's on me. That's my job to do. That's not their responsibility. It's my responsibility to make sure that the people around me, and the people who might turn out to be sponsors or might turn out to be hiring managers, that they know what you want to do, in no uncertain terms. So yeah, it's certainly something I'm now pretty good at.
Yeah, and there's a huge lesson in that as well. It's like there was a gap there, and actually it's our responsibility in our careers to close that gap and to manage it. And we cannot assume. I hear so often, you know, when I was working in the corporate world, and people would moan about not getting a pay rise and a bonus, and I literally, I would say, so what did you do differently?
Have you asked?
And they said, well, I've done my job, I've done this. And I said, but that's your job. You know, when they've got a limited pot of money, again, that's why being top of mind matters. And I talk so much about this, is because who are the people who've really stood out, who've done something, like to your earlier point, have been innovative, who've done something different, who they can think, oh, those are the top 3 people that absolutely deserve. Now, you may well be deserving, but if they don't know, or you've not spoken and talked about it, as you said, overtly, then you're not going to be top of mind for that. So then don't say. But then your other point is ask. And people don't ask for it. Women, let me say, don't ask. Men do. And so that's, as you probably saw in the TEDx, I touched on this, is, you know, this thing around, yes, there is a gender pay gap, absolutely, but it's not just about the employer. The employer's running a profitable business, right? If he thinks all the women are happy on their salaries, hey, are you going to go throw money at them when you're trying to make a profitable business? It's like, or grow a profitable business. So you got to kind of think, then, if you feel you deserve more, go make a business case for it. I did it, and it's
and what's the worst that can happen?
They say no. And that was the hardest conversation, the toughest conversation I ever had to have in my career. Was to do that. But I was more than shocked at the rewards I got from doing that. And had I not asked, I would never have gotten. And it's the same. It's like, yes, companies need to help close that gap, but we as women also need to take responsibility for it. So it's a huge thing. Yeah, because it's not intentional. You know, in my experience, most companies are not setting out to pay women less for what they do. You know, but if you look at people who are successful, they do become very good at selling. Is the wrong word. It makes you feel icky. It's like, you know, selling yourself doesn't sit well with people, but just promoting, you know, what you do and saying, you know, this is what I'm really good at. This is what I can do. This is the gaps I can see, and this is how I potentially fill them. And I think the better you can get at that, and I personally have always struggled to do it myself. I find it if I sit down with a mentor, I also try and do it for other people. That's the other thing you can do is, you know, it's really hard for yourself, but the more you can do it for other people, the more they will reciprocate. So, by the way, the rustling that you can hear is one of these sort of baby toys. she's just reading a book. But yeah, so I think just trying to almost, it's that part about paying it forward. If you can do it for other people, even if you're not in management, you can still do it. So if you're in a meeting, you can speak up for the person who, for whatever reason, is not speaking up for themselves. And if you do that, chances are other people will do it for you. You know, and I'm so grateful to all the people who have done that for me in my career, you know, to date. So I think if you can really see it that way, it really does, you know, and also you've got absolutely nothing to lose. Of course. Like you said, what's the worst that can happen? You're told no. And it's like, the next question, what do I need to do to ensure that I'm considered for a pay rise or a bonus next year?
So then you get some feedback. Exactly. And also it means that people understand, you know, like in my example where it was seen as left field, and I was like, what? You know, that's a chance to have a conversation about what you do want to do. And I think the more opportunity you can take to do that, don't make assumptions that people know. Don't make assumptions that people, if you're unhappy with your compensation, for example, you know, people won't know about that unless you say something. And it is really hard, but it is a lot easier if you do it with a mentor, or sometimes if you do it as a group. You know, collective action is also good. So if there's a group of people that feel that they are underrepresented, get together, you know, do it for each other.
Yeah, totally. And actually that's what I did. Was I went to a mentor and I said, you know, I think this situation isn't right. It's not fair, and I don't want to be perceived to be moaning about something, but something's not sitting with me well here. And he was the one who suggested, he said, put a business, he was familiar with my situation. And so he said, a business case together of everything you've achieved, the challenges you've had to with these clients, present it to your manager and your sales director. And I had to do it over the phone. And I spoke for almost an hour. I didn't get a single word. It was like I laid it all out and I presented it. And at the end, all I got was something along the lines of, well, you know, you've put a good case forward. I'll go and have a think about it. Yeah. And I came up thinking, well, that was a waste of time. And it was horrible, just the whole feeling behind it for me at the time. But when, you know, I got feedback, then actually I'd gotten a significant pay rise. I was like, oh, I wasn't even asking for that. I wasn't expecting that. So again, ask. It's
exactly. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
And also practice, you know, that feeling you talk about, you know, that's when you're out of your comfort zone. But if you practice it on smaller things, then it gradually becomes, when you need to do it for something like that, that's you know, that's really big. If you've practiced it a bit more, even if you're practicing it on behalf of other people, I think that really helps. So it, you know, it all builds confidence. So yeah, I think it's a really, really important point.
Yeah, and again, comfort zone. I'm all about stepping out of your comfort zone. It's you know, people like to be comfortable, and I hear people talk about they want change in their life, but they're not prepared to change. And I think that's a fundamental flaw. You know, if it's saying that, you know, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. It's like you've got to do something differently. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm a strong advocate of, if you don't challenge yourself constantly and take yourself out of the comfort zone, and that includes applying for jobs where you cannot tick all the boxes, you won't realize what you're capable of. And I say that from experience. You know, when I started out as an accountant, I was shy. I had no confidence, no self-esteem. You know, for someone to talk to me about a sales role, no way. Like, it was the last thing from my mind. So to spend, you know, the last 10 years of my career being very successful as a sales exec, and to look how far I've come, and knowing personally what that means to me. But for me to get there, it was constantly stretching myself and doing those uncomfortable things and taking the risks and not knowing if it would work. But I would rather look back and think, okay, I gave it a shot and it didn't work, rather than I never tried and I'll never know.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think, you know, anyone who wants to dive more into that, I would recommend your talk, because it does. It's amazing how much you can regret not doing something, and you almost, in hindsight, you think, why didn't I get that job? Why wasn't I considered for that? You know, and actually you think, well, actually I didn't ask. You know, I didn't put myself out there, and it's really hard to do. So I don't think. Sorry, I've got a very excited little one here. I think she agrees with me. But yeah, I think you have to practice it, and you have to also be prepared for it to fail.
Exactly. So it's
how you learn.
Yeah, not having any expectations of the outcome. It's like letting go of that and just going for it, really, I think.
Yeah, worst case is you learn something and you get some feedback, and that's still a really good thing.
Absolutely. And so bringing all of that together, what would you say have been your biggest challenges in your career?
Oh, so it's a really good question. Something I've realised, and my husband said the other day, I pretty much have a massive crisis of confidence every time I change something. So you talked about change and people not being ready for change. I love change, and I want to have change. I like to be at the cutting edge of change. Sorry, I've got quite a loud little pickle here.
She's not loud at all.
Okay, that's good. So every time I have moved jobs or taken on a new project, I've been like, I can't do this. It's imposter syndrome, and there's loads of talks and things about that. It's a very well documented topic. It does affect women more than men typically. It doesn't mean the men don't have it. But this idea that you're just not good enough and you're going to get discovered, and someone's going to find out that maybe you were given that job by mistake. It was like an administrative error. And I have it every single time. And when I reflect back on it, I'm like, oh, what was I worried about? It was fine. Things are always worse. You think they're going to be much worse than they really are. So some of the challenges I can think of, the first one that really springs to mind, which is the biggest dose of imposter syndrome I've ever had, which was when I did the Customer Innovation Centre. So it's a customer centre at 3M. You can come and see the innovations that we do. And it was really a once in a career opportunity, because businesses like that don't build those kind of things every day. And I had, on reflection, I'd been kind of Googling for a job like that for a while. You know, I'd been quite involved with some of the customer facing innovation stuff anyway. I'd been redesigning some of the demos. At 3M, we have something called 15% culture, which is where you can spend up to 15% of your time doing stuff that's totally outside your job description, which is an amazing freedom. And so I'd been using my 15% culture to kind of tinker with some of the demonstrations that we have for customers. So on reflection, I'd actually done a bit of work unconsciously, or less consciously. Anyway, the job came up, and it was for project manager for the design and build of that centre. Now at 3M, we have loads of project managers, hugely qualified, hugely experienced. They are brilliant. And I got offered the job, and I was like, seriously? Like, and so I remember the weekends that my manager talked about it. I went home and I got the Prince 2 book, and I got the Agile was still just coming in, but so I started reading about Agile methodologies, and I started learning about all this little project management methodology, trying to read the books, because I really felt like I don't know what I'm doing. On Monday morning, I'm having my first project management call as the project manager, and I don't even know what a project manager really does. I had managed projects, but I'd done them in kind of as part of the day job. So it was a fantastic opportunity. It was by far the best project I've ever worked on. It was incredible. It was partly because 3M has this huge range. They've got over 50 different technology platforms, and the idea was that we needed to showcase the best of them. So it was an incredible project to work on, but it was also a really good team. It was working with contractors. It was working with a design agency. It was working with lots of internal teams. And in the end, we delivered it on time, in full, under budget. So, on reflection, I didn't need to worry. And actually, I think the reason that we did well was in the teamwork. It didn't actually matter that I didn't have specialist knowledge. I was able to kind of bring people together. I asked when I got stuck. I had a project management mentor. I had a stakeholder management mentor. I surrounded myself with people who did know what they were doing. Yeah. And so because I was able to do that, it worked out. It was really good. So I think that's something I would say is probably my biggest challenge, like it is for a lot of people, has been imposter syndrome and holding you back from taking opportunities.
But also,
and again, I think
one of your proudest moments, I'm guessing, because now, I mean,
definitely
you've taken me for a tour around that innovation center, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I was shocked, and I realized,
thank you.
What you hear of 3M and you see what they've created, because you don't necessarily know the brands behind some of these products. And to have that tour, I mean, how many, you're seeing thousands of customers?
Yeah, so we welcome about 6,000 visitors a year. Obviously, this year has been a bit different. But yeah, I think we launched it in 2014, and I think by 2016 it had over 10,000 visitors. And the best thing for me is that some of those visitors have been schools. So to be able to show people that innovation can be really exciting, and we use digital technologies and things, I'm hugely proud of it. And actually, on reflection, to have not taken that job because I was nervous about doing it would have just been such a big mistake. I'm so pleased I did. And I'm so pleased that the people who sponsored me into that role, that they took a risk on me. Because they didn't have to. They could have put an experienced project manager in there. They chose me because I was super passionate about the technologies. But I'm so grateful to them for doing that. So that kind of comes back to what we were talking about sponsors.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And so to bring this to a close, Sarah, tell me a little bit about what you stand for. What's your personal brand for you within your career, within your life? What are your values? What's important to you?
So my primary focus is around the people. So I'm quite good at connecting people. So I like to create thoughtful connections and drive results through collaboration rather than kind of people alone. And I think as a manager, I really just want to be a champion for other people because I've benefited from that so much myself. I want to try and do that for other people. So that's my focus.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for taking time out to speak with me today. I really appreciate it, and I wish you every success in all that you're doing. I admire what you've achieved, and you know, your journey going forward, I'm sure is going to be absolutely outstanding. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lila. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And remember to leave a review telling us about your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on the importance of personal branding when it comes to your career advancement. And also ensure that others can benefit from these invaluable insights from many inspirational leaders. I will be eternally grateful. And if you are looking to earn more money, to get promoted, to secure your next role and advance your career, and would like me to support you personally on that journey to get you there, then reach out to me and let's arrange a chat. Alternatively, why don't you check out my personal branding launchpad, a group training and mentoring program. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, then do reach out and direct message me on LinkedIn. You can find the link as well as any other resources mentioned in the show notes. I'll see you next time.